Jasper Johnson will have a dynamic freshman year at Kentucky, but he's going to be coming off the bench to do it.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks? Happy Friday, and welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a daily national college hoops show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your co-hosts. I'm Andy Patton. He is Isaac Schade over there, getting ready for a fun weekend here as we're celebrating the end of the summer, which means we're getting close to fall, which is football season, which means we're closer and closer to basketball season. That is the excitement here. Folks, thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Of course, I want to give a special shout out to those everyday listeners and those of you hanging out with us in the Locked On College Basketball Discord channel. Remind you all that you can check out the show ad-free on Amazon Music. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season, like we said, it's just around the corner, folks, and visit the FanDuel app today, and you can start planning your futures bets now. Well, Isaac, we are continuing our what we kind of dubbed the freshman breakout series, coming off of doing the sophomore breakouts, the junior breakouts, and the senior breakouts over the last couple of weeks here on Locked On College Basketball. Obviously, freshmen don't really have the ability to break out in that sense, but what we're doing is we're talking about non-five-star freshmen from each of the power conferences that we think have the opportunity to put up some really big numbers in their first college hoops season. On Monday's episode, for those of you who missed it, we talked about the ACC, the Big East, and the Big Ten. Some really fun freshmen to talk about in those conferences. For today's show, that means we are talking about the SEC, the Big 12, and then we're closing out the show with the best of the rest, picking some freshmen at non-power conference schools so we think might have big seasons. And so we said non-five-star just to kind of quickly put a bow on what that means. It means players who are not five stars at all three of the major recruiting sites, which would be 247 Sports, ESPN, and then On3/Rivals. There's a list of about 12 players who would count as clear five-star players, and we're not picking out of that group. So, Isaac, who does that mean we are picking, at least for the SEC? Who is your pick here for that conference and a player that you think might have a big freshman year?
Andy, I'm going with Jasper Johnson at Kentucky. I absolutely love watching this young man play basketball. It's fun. It's engaging. It's great. He's electric with the ball, shooting, passing, all that. He's 6'4", 175, needs a little meat on them bones. He's another one of my southpaws. I'm a lefty. I always love a good lefty. This dude is 24th in the class, at leleast at 247. I think he's probably a bit underranked, which is wild because 24th is still like insanely high. But I just think that might be underselling it a little bit. He last 2 years has played his junior year down at Link Academy. That's a big basketball school down in Branson, Missouri. Last year he was at OTE. Andy, he was 7th in all of OTE last year, 20 points a game. Led OTE in total assists, 5.8 a game. 3rd in assists per game. 2 years ago at Link, shot 41% from three. Last year at OTE, 36%. I say all that to say my dude can do it from deep. He can distribute. He can do it in the mid-range when he needs to. He's got the size, the height size to get to the rim. He needs to bulk up a little bit to do everything he needs to do in traffic and all that. But I say all that to say this dude is so Swiss Army knife, can do anything you need offensively, again, on the ball, off the ball, the mid-range, all of it. And so, Andy, part of what I really like about Jasper is his combo size with his gravity as a shooter, with his gravity as a playmaker. And if that all comes together at Kentucky as it has everywhere else, and hello, in a Mark Pope offense, no reason to think it won't, right? Then he should be able to do great stuff. I as you said in the cold open, I do not see him starting out of the gate because you've got Jalen Lowe coming in from Pitt. He's going to be pretty, usage heavy. Denzel Aberdeen coming over from Florida. He didn't start at Florida, but projects probably to move up into that this year. Otega Owe coming back to Kentucky, where I think he will have a high usage rate as well. So, there's a real world in which Jasper Johnson is your SEC sixth man of the year because he's that good. But I could also see a world in which he relegates Denzel Aberdeen eventually back to the bench like he did at Florida. And that doesn't mean that either of them are less players. It's just he's that good. And so I think, Andy, what we're looking for is, can Jasper put some more meat on his bones in this first year? And where is the defensive level at, right? And if all those do what you need them to do, watch out.
Yeah, I like this pick a lot. I think for me, it's the playing time question, and I think, like you mentioned, Lowe and Aberdeen and Owe, I think those are the three guys who are going to soak up a huge amount of minutes in the backcourt. I think Johnson is very clearly in the mix outside of those guys, and I think at this point I would be very surprised and honestly a little concerned if he was behind the next group of guards for that team, which would be Colin Chandler or Trent Noah, guys who I think are more like kind of low-level role players than anything else, and would be better player or more significant players on other teams, but that's just how deep this SEC team is for Kentucky. But Johnson's a guy that I think I wouldn't be surprised, like you said, if he does end up climbing his way into either a significant role off the bench or potentially even pushing Aberdeen to the bench in what it kind of just depends less so on talent and more so on just fit. Whereas if one of those guys ends up being better at being off the ball, because I think Owe and Lowe are going to have the ball so much, you almost want that third starter to be somebody who doesn't have the ball in their hands all that much. That's kind of why I lean Aberdeen, because I think that allowed Johnson to kind of take on a more ball-dominant role off the bench, which might fit his skill set better, and also I think lends itself to him, like you said, being in contention for that SEC Sixth Man of the Year award. But Isaac, I went a different direction with another freshman for Alabama, the Crimson Tide, who I know you and Leaf just talked about on Thursday's episode of Locked On College Basketball, and that's London Jemison. Jemison's a 6'8", 4-star forward. He's 38th ranked prospect in the 247 Sports rankings for this upcoming 2025 class, and he's a kind of a prototypical role player type, but he's very much a prototypical Nate Oates role player type. And I think he's going to assimilate very seamlessly into what the Crimson Tide like to do offensively. Last year at the EYBL, he shot 37+% from three on 6+ attempts per game. And that's what I mean by a Nate Oates role player. He is a 6'8" forward who bombs from beyond the arc. He is a efficient three-point shooter, a high volume three-point shooter. And I think he is going to immediately carve out a role for the Tide as a catch and shoot specialist. He's also the bag offensively is not significant yet, but as a straight line driver, he can get to the rim. He's going to be able to even at his age, I think he's going to be good enough and physical enough to get to the rim when he needs to. Again, he's not going to be, crossing guys up or anything like that, but pump fake, 2 dribbles, get to the lane, that kind of thing, I think absolutely fits his style already. I think he's going to be decent enough defensively. It probably takes a year or two to get really good on that end of the floor. But Alabama doesn't really care. They just want him on the floor to do one thing and one thing only, which
bomb away.
And bomb away, exactly. And I think that for those reasons, I don't think Jemison's a star, at least not yet. Maybe he develops into a star player for them, but I think that the opportunity for him to be an immediately impactful player for this Alabama team is pretty obviously there.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that prototype. I'm thinking of 2 years ago with like Rylan Griffin, who I know is a little bit shorter, or Sam Walters, who ended up transferring, but was a little bit taller. There's so much potential there, Andy, and part of what Leaf and I talked about yesterday, and I kind of intentionally didn't talk about Jemison because I knew you were going to today, but with so much production, literally 7 of their top 9 scorers are gone from last year. Obviously, there's guys that are holdovers that are going to step into a lot of those roles. There's other new transfers coming in that'll help as well. But I think Jemison has a lot of potential to find a good space to carve out for himself here, Andy. So I love this pick. And man, it's just watching Nate Oates' teams on offense is so fun. And I think Jemison has a lot of potential there to be a big part of that. Now, Andy, obviously we could only pick 2 of them, but there are a lot of other freshmen that weren't those 5 stars as you laid it out earlier that could fit into that. Interestingly, Darius Acuff and Malik Arkansas were not 5 stars at all 3 sites, although I think you and I would both say they are very much 5-star talent. So it's very by letter of the law that we've set for ourselves only that they fit into this show. They're going to be dynamic for John Calipari. CJ Ingram is a freshman at Florida. Andy, I am very intrigued to see what he's going to do for this team. Obviously, their front court is loaded. We do have some backcourt questions, and I think there's a possibility for him to really fit in there in some big ways. We talked about Kentucky and Jasper Johnson. Malachi Moreno is also there. Braden Hawthorne as well. Nico Bundalo, all the different ways to say his last name, has hopped around a little bit before he wound up at Ole Miss. I think he'll be great for Chris Beard. Alex Lloyd at Florida, and then Amari Evans at Tennessee, or some others that we have our eyes on. Andy, Houston, already has an elite backcourt. But a couple freshmen, including one that I'm picking, could be exactly what Kelvin Sampson needs to push this program over the national championship that they were oh so close to last year. We'll tell you about it in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel, August 26th, next week, is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. Maybe you want to take a flyer on the MVP race. How about Saquon Barkley, man? Coming off a Super Bowl, coming off a crazy season for the Eagles. His odds are still pretty long, though, because NFL running back. I'm looking at that. Crowning my champ early, let's go with the Eagles to repeat. They and the Bills and the Ravens have the best odds at FanDuel. Maybe you want to pick all 8 division winners. Parlay those together. That'd be super cool to try out. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. Andy, we just teased my Houston pick, so I'm going to throw it to myself and stay with Houston. As I said, there's a couple of Houston freshmen that are going to be part of this backcourt rotation that we're very excited about. The one I went with, though, is Isiah Harwell, Andy, who, similar to the 2 Arkansas guys we just talked about, is a 5-star at least one of the sites, but not all 3 of them, so he fits here. Andy, this dude is insane. He is 6'6". He's 200 pounds, classified as a shooting guard, but honestly, you could play him at shooting guard, as a secondary point guard, or as a wing. He was a McDonald's All-American last year, team high 16 points. Andy, here's the thing for me with Isiah Harwell. You know it because I know Gonzaga recruited him very heavily before he ultimately picked Houston. He had an ACL injury that kept him out for over a year. Were it not for that, I think he would have contended with Cam Boozer and AJ DeBanza and Darren Peterson and Nate Amen in like the top 4 or 5 players in this class. He's that level of good. But man, an ACL when you're out for that long in those couple precious years of the recruiting, it's just, you're not going to find your way back into that territory. But as he's been back, he played, last fall, and he's been back playing, but still, man, it takes a while to work back to full form. And the nice thing for Isiah Harwell is it's Houston, where Kelvin Sampson notoriously has been hesitant to give freshmen massive roles with thoughts and shouts to Jarris Walker. But him coming an already loaded backcourt allows him to not have to take on a crazy massive role yet, but he can take on as big a role as his skill set and body and readiness will allow him to do. He's got the skills to do defensively what Kelvin Sampson needs him to do. He's not the defender yet that some others challenging for his role will get, but he has enough of that included with all the other skill sets that he has offensively, including being a good perimeter rebounder. And Andy, there's a lot here. When I think about role for him, I think 4 of Houston's 5 starting positions are locked in, right? Emmanuel Sharp and Milos Uzan in the backcourt, Jojo Tugler and Chris Senak in the front court. And then it's either that 2 or 3, whichever you want to call it, right? And I think it's between Isiah Harwell and Mercy Miller and Kingston Flemings, another freshman, and Ramon Walker. I texted our great Locked On Houston Cougars host, Parker Ainsworth, to get his thoughts on it if he thought that we'd get a starting role for Isiah Harwell. And dude, he wrote me a tome, a novel back, and I love it. But basically, there's a whole bunch of different schools of thought where Kingston Flemings has had a great offseason, so a lot of people think he'll start. Mercy Miller has a great fit in terms of strength and everything else. But there's also a lot that Isiah Harwell, he says he's the best offensive fit to get that 5th starting spot. And so he says, ultimately, I would bet it's Mercy Miller to start the year, but Isiah Harwell moves into that 5th starting role over the course of the season. So that's kind of where Parker's landing right now. Regardless, Andy, of whether he starts or not, Isiah Harwell is going to have a massive role for this team. And I don't mind saying it's a big part of why Houston is going to challenge and contend for another shot at a national championship.
Very interested in Houston. and Kelvin Sampson needing to rely more on freshmen than he has historically.
Yep.
I say needing to. He doesn't. I mean, outside of center with Cenac, he doesn't need to necessarily. With Uzan back and with Sharp back and Mercy Miller and Ramon Walker are guys who could take a leap and be really productive players on the wing in a sense that could allow Houston to still be very good, even if Flemings and Harwell don't play all that much. But ultimately, those guys are going to play. I mean, they're very, very talented, and it would be. I mean, either it would be very silly to not play them a lot unless they're just not the dudes that we think that they are. And I just have a hard time believing that's going to be the case. I think Harwell is somebody who fits very naturally into that starting lineup alongside Sharp and Uzan in a way that I don't think Flemings does. I think Flemings and Uzan are a little bit too similar in some ways. And I just think that Flemings makes more sense coming off the bench. Mercy Miller, I only know what he's done at Houston, which just isn't very much at this point. But if he's impressing in the offseason, I could see that making some sense. But Harwell's a fantastic player. He's a guy that Gonzaga really, really wanted for a long time. He's from Pocatello, Idaho, which is not too far from Spokane. They were in on him for a really long time. The injury was kind of thought to almost help Gonzaga in a sense that they could kind of keep him under wraps. But once Houston got a hold and got word, Gonzaga actually tried to pivot and go after Kingston Flemings because their thought process was there's no way Kelvin Sampson's going to be able to get and pay both of those guys. And Gonzaga was unfortunately left holding the bag, the empty bag in that situation, as the Cougs did get both these guys. But yeah, I think it's going to be really fun to see how Sampson integrates these freshmen into this lineup this year. But the fact that they have those veteran guards back in the mix just puts so much less pressure on these guys to contribute right away and should ultimately help them. By the end of the year, I think those two guys are going to be fantastic players for this Cougars program. And Harwell may end up being a starter and one of the better young players in the entire Big 12.
All right, Andy, who's your Big 12 pick for kind of breakout freshman?
I also went with the guard at a high-profile program in the Big 12, not quite as highly regarded, and that's Jamarion Bateman. Jamarion Bateman at Iowa State, 6'3" combo guard. He's a four-star player, ranked 42nd in the class, according to 247 Sports. He chose Iowa State over Marquette, and the recent reports out of TJ Otzelberger's camp are that Bateman has really impressed him with his defense in practice. And to me, that was the line in the article that made me pick him, because that's so valuable to Coach Otzelberger. That's so valuable to Iowa State in general, is having somebody who can contribute defensively. And freshmen notoriously struggle to contribute right away on defense, at least. And so I think that the fact that he's already impressed in that area gives him a more clear path to playing time. He's also a great three-point shooter. On 9 attempts per game last year in high school, he shot 41%. So this is a dude who can absolutely light it up from deep. He's looked strong defensively. With Mason Williams' injury, there's room in Iowa State's rotation for a player to step up and give them immediate minutes right away, Bateman being among them. Obviously, they have Lipsy, they have Heisey back, they have Dom Nelson. Like, I think Bateman's in that mix, though, as well, to play the two, maybe even play some backup minutes at the one. Yeah, I would not be surprised at all if he ends up having a really solid freshman year for Coach Otz in the Cyclones. Isaac, we do have some other honorable mentions. We already talked about Kingston Fleming, so we won't get too much into him, but I do want to talk about a couple of Cincinnati players in particular, following the news that Jizzle James has been dismissed from the Bearcats program. I think that pretty clearly clears a path for Keyshawn Tillery, four-star point guard coming into that program to potentially fill the backup point guard role behind Kerr Kriisa. So he's going to step into a bigger role. Sean Abayev is another strong freshman for them, their highest regarded freshman in this class. He's a small forward, but with Jizzle James not in the mix, they need more scoring. So I could see that being a spot where he contributes a little bit more than maybe they initially thought that he would. We also have Dwayne Aristad from Arizona, Xavion Staten, a backup center for BYU, and then Caden Edwards at TCU, among many others. The Big 12 has quite a collection of high-profile freshmen coming in, but these are some of the ones that are non-5 stars, or at least not consensus 5 stars, that we think could really contribute this year in that conference. Isaac, VCU has a top 60 freshman coming in. That does not happen very often. In fact, he's the second highest ranked player ever for the Rams, according to 247 Sports. So how much of an impact could Nick Lewis have in his first year? We're going to talk about that in just a second. The first guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pills, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in just about 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment's right. If traditional options have not worked for you, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. I love that it's completely online. Rugiet connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege. You'll get 15% off today. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege. Use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. All right, Isaac, closing out the show and closing out our freshman breakout series here on Locked On College Basketball with a couple of picks from the mid-major ranks. Isaac, who do you have? We teased it a little bit, talking about a player from VCU. Why do you like Nick Lewis so much joining the Rams program this year?
Oh man, Andy, you said it's crazy. Like, people below the Power 5 level so rarely get like a top 50-ish, top 60 type player. And that's what Nick Lewis is at VCU. And so this is a great get for the Rams. He's a tiny little buddy he's taller than me, but in terms of college basketball players, he's 6'1", 195, dude. Like, let me remind you all at the beginning of the show, I said Jasper Johnson is 6'4", 175. So Nick Lewis is built like almost like a running back, honestly, just one of those shifty kind of scat back guys. And that's the thing. He's from Washington, D.C., Gonzaga High School. And while he is just 6'1", but that 195, that might feel bulky. But Andy, what I love about Nick Lewis's game is he's a road runner, dude. He wants to get out and run. He wants to get in transition. He wants to go fast, but he's got the ability to speed shift. And that, to me, is a next level capability that a lot of freshmen haven't yet learned. If they want to go fast, that's all it is fifth gear, go, right? But that ability to get into the lane, use shift and movement of body from horizontally, revert, whatever it is tough to find in somebody coming into college. Now, that said, his attack mode can be both a blessing and a curse. Again, he is only, again in quotes, 6'1", and so sometimes gets himself into a trouble attacking. His height will not always allow him to finish amongst the trees down in there. But, he's learned how to finish craftily as he needs to do, some unique ways. But that's kind of the area for him, is just he can shift the speeds when he needs to, but also needs to continue to make smarter decisions with like how deep to get toward the rim at times. Andy, where the potential thing is right now is that he's not always a consistent, reliable shooter. There's nothing to me that suggests from his form he can't and won't grow into that, including the fact that he's a phenomenal 85% plus free throw shooter. But at the A10 level, I think that his athleticism, his driving capability, his build are enough to get him where he needs to go. Also, the fact that he's a very strong defender. So those, to me, his pace and his defensive doggedness are the biggest calling cards right now. And then he needs to keep working on that perimeter shot to really, really raise his ceiling.
VCU, a very strong program historically, and I have no doubt that Lewis is the kind of player who's going to help that program right away. Excited to see what he's able to do over in the A10. But Isaac, I went with a team that is for now considered a not Power 5, and we'll have to debate what happens next year when the Pac-12 is reformed, because Boise State will, of course, be part of that new look conference. But for this year, their final season in the Mountain West, we're going to count him, and we're going to talk about Spencer Aarons today. Spencer Aarons, a 3-star power forward, and as you mentioned, these non-power conference teams are rarely getting top 50 recruits, and Aarons is very not highly regarded, at least by 247 Sports. They have him 214th in this recruiting class. Now, On3 has him as a 4-star ranked 121st. There's a pretty significant discrepancy between those two recruiting services. And Aarons was recruited by a handful of very high-profile programs, which kind of leads me to err on the side of believing On3's rankings in this spot. Aarons was picked Boise State over offers from Illinois, over an offer from Gonzaga, from Washington, from Stanford, and from San Francisco. So mostly power conference teams, and then a very good mid-major school in the Dons there. And Aaron's, when making his announcement and making his decision to go to Boise State, he specifically mentioned wanting to go somewhere where he believed he would be able to play right away. And he mentioned by name Tyson Degenhart, who just finished an incredibly prolific career at Boise State for the Broncos. And Degenhart averaged 13 points per game as a freshman. And Aaron's called that out specifically, saying, this is a team, this is a staff that has a vision for me similar to that. And I want to come in and be able to contribute right away. I'm not going to stake a claim necessarily that Aaron's averages 13 a game as a freshman. That's a pretty bold prediction, but he picked a school where he thinks he has the opportunity to do that. He wasn't going to get that chance at Gonzaga. He was not going to get that chance at Illinois. Probably wouldn't have gotten that chance at UW. Can't say convincingly he wouldn't have at Stanford or San Francisco, but Boise State makes a lot of sense when kind of considering what mattered to him about his first collegiate stop. Aaron's is a 6'8" stretch 4. He can kind of play both the 3 or the 4. The Degenhart comparison does make some sense, as Degenhart could kind of play down low and bang with guys if he needed to, but he could also step out and play the 3 in Leon Rice's offense. And I think Aaron's is capable of that. And we got a pretty good look at him in the FIBA U19 World Cup event that you and I talked about a handful of times on the show, mostly talking about the Team USA group, but Aaron's was with Canada for that team, and he was really, really good, Isaac. He averaged 10.5 points and a little over 6 rebounds in those 7 games. He also took 35 threes, so that's 5 per game, and he knocked down 15 of them, which is 43%. So again, it's obviously a small sample, but for a player who's outside the top 200 at 247 Sports and outside the top 100 at On3, to go out and average 10 and 6 in that kind of environment. I mean, he had 16 points against Slovenia. I think he had a really good game against a couple other teams. He didn't play as well against Team USA, but I still think he knocked down a couple of threes against them as well. This is a kid who I think is pretty clearly expecting to or planning to have a big role right away for the Broncos. And based on the skill set, the size, the kind of what he likes to do and what they lost in Degenhart, it feels like he could kind of be their hope to kind of fill that role for them going forward. And I like a lot of what he does and what kind of fit he might have in Leon Rice's offense. And I think he's a freshman that's going to surprise some people this year.
Can't wait to see what he does for the Broncos in the blue and orange. I can't wait to see that football field in a couple weeks. Andy, let's get after it. As we've been doing with every one of the conferences, even though we're now pooling all the mid-majors and low majors together, Andy, we do want to mention a few honorable mentions, 3 of which all come from the West Coast Conference. We've got Dylan Shaw at St. Mary's, Davis Fogel at Gonzaga, Jayon Pitt at Pacific, and then elsewhere, Tyron Jones from UNLV, going back to the Mountain West. Oh, by the way, Joshua Lewis at Louisiana, and DeAndre Lindsay at Iona. So, Andy, obviously, ton of talent going to be all around the country, but those are just a couple other guys we wanted to shout out as well. So, there you go, gang. Breakout freshmen from all 5 power conferences and some from the best of the rest as well. Love these segments. If there's some similar to this that you would like to hear, we love doing stuff like this. Let us know and we'll bring it your way throughout this off season as we continue to roll out team previews, conference previews. Andy, I heard on a podcast the other day that I think the SEC, we've already got it. The Big 12 is about to roll out their conference schedule, so that should be upcoming pretty soon as well. Guys, hope you all have a great weekend. We're going to have some football this weekend. That'll be great. And we'll talk again on Monday, but for now, we want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Cheers to our McBruins, and until Monday, peace.